You're watching Capitol Conversations with Congressman Mike McIntyre, an opportunity for the people of southeastern North Carolina to get an inside look at the issues facing the nation and the U.S. Congress. I invite you to see how your community is affected. Now, from Washington, D.C., here's Congressman Mike McIntyre.
Welcome to Capitol Conversations. I'm Mike McIntyre, your congressman from southeastern North Carolina. And this program is part of our ongoing effort to keep you informed about our work in Washington and how it affects you. Today I'm here with Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, who represents Ohio's 9th Congressional District. Congresswoman Kaptur has deep working class roots and was the first member of her family to attend college. She also has risen to senior positions here in Congress and now serves on the U.S. House Appropriations Committee and the Budget Committee. Not only is she the senior Democratic woman on the Appropriations Committee, she is also the longest-serving woman currently in the U.S. House of Representatives. Marcy Kaptur is a real friend, and she's quite accomplished. She is an author and has been a leader on issues related to international trade, where she continues to be a very powerful voice. She has a wealth of expertise and leadership experience, so today we'll be discussing a number of important issues and challenges that face our nation. We'll talk about their impact on our communities back home, not only in her home, but also the practical ways it affects us in our home back in North Carolina, and the ways that Marcy and I and others are trying to work to deal with these problems. So I'm pleased that Congresswoman Kaptur has joined me today. Marcy, welcome. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for taking your time. I know how busy the schedules are right now with everything going on in Washington, but I'm thrilled to let my friends back home meet you and have the respect for you. I know they will after hearing you speak today that I have had over the years, and God bless you. Thank you for that commitment you've made to leadership here in the Congress.
Thank you, Mike, very much for what you do and for the strong voice you bring to the Congress from the citizens of North Carolina and indeed the entire region. We're very fortunate that you're dedicating part of your life here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. You know as well as I do that some of these trade agreements have not been the free trade agreements we were told. And they've been anything but free. They've been very costly to jobs, costly to people's livelihoods and their well-being. I know the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, was passed just before I came to Congress, a couple of years before I was elected in '96 and came in '97. NAFTA had already been passed. But I saw what it did, and one of the reasons I was motivated to run for Congress originally was the concern about how NAFTA had cost so many jobs of friends I was in high school with, that went to my church, that lived in my neighborhood. We saw a lot of factories close down and people lose their jobs right down the road from where I live in North Carolina. So the textile and apparel industries were severely hit. We also know in North Carolina the furniture industry's been hit. And now I have a bill to repeal NAFTA, and a lot of people back home say, we've tried, we've been patient, we saw what it did to us. We were told, I know by President Clinton, there would be pockets of distress. Well, we lived in one of those pockets of distress when that bill went through, but there's still distress, and so I know that's a bill that we have been concerned about. Tell me how you have felt about these trade agreements and how they've affected us back home with jobs in areas like you have in Ohio, just like I know have affected our folks in North Carolina.
Our respective states are manufacturing and agricultural hubs for our nation.
Right.
And those trade agreements cause great hardship across the regions that we represent. And though we believe very much in free and open trade, unless it's fair and reciprocal and balanced, it really doesn't operate in the long-term interests of this country. They promised us with NAFTA that we would have trade surpluses. We would be selling more there than they're selling here. That was absolutely false. We've actually racked up over $1 trillion of trade deficit in the red with Mexico, and every person knows it. I was in Congressman Boswell's district in Iowa to find out what happened to Maytag, which used to be a well-known American brand. And as with furniture, you can go south of the border and you can see that company rebuilt in Mexico, and the people who make them can't afford to buy them. And then they're shipped back here to the communities where those used to be made, such as Newton, Iowa. And so whether it's cars, electronics, windshield wipers, furniture, you can see the outsourcing, even the production of hogs and hog platforms from the Midwest and elsewhere moving down into Mexico City, for example, where the environmental standards are simply horrendous. And so you don't see any reciprocal trade. And in terms of the workers and the way that they're treated in our country, plants are often just shuttered. People report for work and the company's closed. And the workers of Mexico find themselves being thrown off their little farmsteads. They can't earn a living, and they provide an endless pool of very low paid wages across this continent. It's really sad what's happened in Mexico, and we've seen the drug trade really take over as their primary industry now because of the squalor in which so many of the people live.
And obviously that drug industry has had terrible ramifications for America's war on drugs and what's come into our country illegally. It's a problem that has all kinds of ramifications, not only with the drug war, but also with everything you're talking about associated with the trade issue. And I'm glad you touched on many areas, because we also have a tremendous hog industry in eastern North Carolina. I'm glad you mentioned that, in addition to the textile situation, and also in North Carolina the furniture situation. One of the proposals to help deal with this and to get our manufacturing base charged up again is the Make It in America legislation, which I know you and I both have been very supportive of in terms of the legislative initiatives to let's literally make it in America, being a term that we know means we all want to make it, we want our families to make it, our children to make it, and it also means we literally want to make the product in America. We all remember how Made in the USA was the label we looked for, and it's so rare to find that now in clothing and apparel. It's rare to find that, unfortunately, in a lot of other manufactured goods as well. Tell us your feeling about how the Make It in America legislation can help reignite that manufacturing base here in the United States.
Well, I think first of all, by letting people know that we in the government of the United States, which is a voice for the American people, care about manufacturing in this country, and that when the government buys, it should give priority to the American people, so long as it's a cost competitive product and it's a quality product. Why not buy it here? So our legislation for buying, for instance, Homeland Security uniforms for the Transportation Security Agency, why shouldn't we procure from American manufacturers? I'll tell you, I was shocked when I traveled to the Carolinas and I saw your shuttered textile plants. It looked like our shuttered automotive plants, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's another industry, the same situation. And then I look at the quality of what's coming in here, it's simply not the same. The quality isn't as good. The price hasn't gone down, but the quality isn't as good. And so we as the government have to set a standard for the country, and I think it's so advantageous to business to be able to sell into every agency of the U.S. government, whether it's paper cups or styrofoam cups in the cafeterias that we operate, whether it's the Department of Defense or whether it's the Congress of the United States, whether it's military uniforms or whether it's sheets for the Department of Veterans Affairs. We can do a lot of, put an affirmative effort forward to find U.S. companies that can make those goods.
Oh, you're right. In fact, we still have a shirt manufacturer in southeastern North Carolina, which is amazing. They're now the only domestic shirt manufacturer in the country. And a lot of people don't realize that until you go to the store and look at the labels in your clothes, and you start realizing how many of them all types of countries now are producing, because our apparel market has gone overseas, and we know how we've suffered under these trade agreements. I also know that I'm glad that you've seen the shuttered plants and the concerns that we've had, and that's why I'm hoping that this Make It in America legislation, as we give tax incentives to companies to keep their manufacturing facilities here, or for those who may have followed the temptation to go to other countries overseas or south of the border, that they come back. And thankfully we're beginning to see some of those companies come back now as they see those tax incentives to stay here or to move some of their manufacturing facilities back. And there's some examples of that, and I hope our viewers will contact our office if you would like to know more about that, or if you have a business that wants to know what incentive is there for me to stay within the borders of the United States. Folks, there are many, and we want to bring those jobs back. We want American jobs making American goods. Marcy, in the time we have, I know we're trying to cover a lot of ground. Let me mention something else. In speaking, you mentioned military uniforms, and I know the Berry Amendment is an amendment in armed services we deal with to make sure that our uniforms are made in America. And I remember when we were talking about some of the berets for the Army, for instance, we were shocked when they were being made overseas, and we had to go through a fight in armed services to make sure we were making sure our military were wearing American-made uniforms. You and I both have an interest in armed services as well as agriculture, and I serve on the authorizing committees as a senior member of both agriculture and armed services, and I know you serve on the appropriation committees that oversee both of those areas. Tell me what you think we can do. I let you just say however you see it and call the shots on it. As you look at appropriations decisions that have to be made for American agriculture, and we know the Farm Bill is coming up, as we also look at defense and American security, what you see as important ways when you consider appropriations and the best way we can help keep our national defense strong and also keep American agriculture strong.
Well, let's start with agriculture, Mike, because both North Carolina and Ohio are huge agricultural states. And
right.
We have a success story in U.S. agriculture. It is our biggest exporter, and it constantly provides us with a trade surplus. Were that true in every other sector, we wouldn't have a problem.
Exactly.
We actually wouldn't have a national deficit because we would be making more, growing more in this country. So we don't want to do anything to harm U.S. agriculture, and the best thing we could do is give confidence to the market by passing a farm bill.
Exactly.
And getting the lackluster leadership that exists in the Congress today to move that bill forward. With the droughts we're experiencing across our country, we don't need to waste time in terms of giving confidence to those markets so they can continue their excellent record. In addition, in the Farm Bill, there are a lot of new incentives for Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, promoting local agriculture, our defense bases buying local food that is grown locally, trying to give incentives so that, and just paying attention to where procurement occurs so that we can buy more from our local producers and put those dollars back in the pockets of local farmers and local producers. On the defense side, I'll tell you we've had problems with implementing the Berry Amendment. As clear as the Berry Amendment is, because so much of defense is subcontracted. We have a problem, and I have been putting pressure with many other members on the Department of Defense to report back to us on how they are going to implement the Berry Amendment, because even though it's the law, it isn't enforced. And so on the defense side, we have real issues with trying to get that department to use its enormous buying power to promote Make It in America and U.S.-made goods. So we've got a ways to go there to get improvement.
Well, I appreciate you mentioned both of those. Now, on agriculture, when you talked about it being the great industry it is, most people don't even realize in North Carolina, we know agriculture has been there and has been important since colonial times, but it is still the #1 industry in North Carolina. And so when we are fighting for the Farm Bill, we're talking about the overall economic well-being of the state, not only to help the farmers, as clearly as important as that is, but we're talking about rural economic development. Most people don't realize under the Farm Bill that water and sewer, you know, if you can't get the clean water in and the dirty water out, a very basic necessity in life, but if you can't get that done, and some of our rural communities have trouble with that, then you can't bring in industry, business, jobs, the opportunity for health clinics, for schools, and that affects the overall economy. Rural broadband has been another big area that's considered in the Farm Bill. Our rural telephone and rural utilities, obviously those are driving factors with job opportunity and the economic development. So the Farm Bill is a very comprehensive bill in terms of economic empowerment for our rural areas. And I know in North Carolina, 85 of our 100 counties are considered rural. So 85% of the state literally is affected by the Farm Bill. And I know you experienced a similar situation in Ohio. And then I appreciate what you do on appropriations because that has such a big impact, as well as the 5 military bases we have in eastern North Carolina and what you do on defense. You mentioned something on agriculture about the local farm products being sold, and one project I know that has gone well in the agriculture department has been with our local farmers markets, making sure those fruits and vegetables get into our local schools, and that our farmers, it's a win-win for the farmers, and it's a win obviously for the children because they're getting healthy snacks and fruits and vegetables and learning to enjoy those freshly grown products. I know we have a great farmers market that started recently in Elizabethtown, North Carolina. I know in Toledo, Ohio, you have a great farmers market. Tell us where you see that going, those opportunities for those local farmers being able to sell their goods and promote their goods at local farmers markets in their communities, as well as the connection with the schools and other local industries that we can promote.
Well,
local
with your help, Mike,
products.
we were able to put additional language in the Farm Bill to encourage the improvements to local farmers markets. For the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, electronic benefits cards, they can be used at farmers markets now. So local farmers can be providing the food that people are buying, senior citizens, the unemployed, families who are on hard times. Before, they would only be able to spend those at grocery stores. Now we're giving farmers a chance to direct sell. That is one of the most important ways to unlock new income to local farmers. If you take a look at our Senior Farmers Market Coupon Program, helping our seniors move those coupons to farmers markets in some places in the country, and I don't know if North Carolina has done this, they even have double SNAP coupon days where seniors and others get double coupons that they can spend through SNAP at their local markets. So sales have been increasing at farmers markets. And of course, when you go to a grocery store, many times people use their SNAP coupons and their cards, their EBT cards, for products that aren't raised in the United States, aren't grown or processed.
Good point.
So what's great about the farmers markets is it's local product, and you put that income right back in their pockets.
That's a great example, and that's why I think we've got to keep agriculture at a cutting edge, and that's why we want to be able to compete on the world marketplace, and also why at home we want to see their products be successfully sold and marketed.
Could I say a word about schools just for a second?
Sure.
I don't know how it works in North Carolina, but in Ohio, the money that goes for school breakfasts and school lunches goes to the state of Ohio, and then the state of Ohio Department of Education, which knows very little about agriculture, puts that money down into the system to buy food, but it's sort of unconscious. And they don't really link to local farmers. And one of the most important things farmers can do is to get in touch with whomever at the state level actually receives those federal funds and figure out how do we connect those to the farmers.
We, in fact, I mentioned the town of Elizabethtown a little while ago about the new farmers market we got there in working with USDA Rural Development. And just about a year ago, we had a promotion at the Elizabethtown Primary School showing how we're doing that, how we're getting local farmers' products, fruits and vegetables into the schools. And that was a prime example. We've got the farmers market in Elizabethtown, and we've got the local school that we went, and we had an undersecretary from the Department of Agriculture. So it is a great way to promote that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. And it's a win-win for our children to eat healthier meals, and obviously for our farmers to be able to sell their products. Our time is already getting short. Let me mention something. When you were talking about senior citizens just then, that's another area that you and I share a passion for, is helping our senior citizens and preserving Social Security and Medicare, making sure that we do the right thing in how we balance the budget, how we work on being fiscally responsible, but making sure that we never take away from what our senior citizens have earned or paid out through their livelihood over the years, and we protect Social Security and Medicare. And we also adjust the consumer price index for our senior citizens, because we know their buying needs are different. They have greater need for medicine, for health care appliances, and for nursing skill care and other things that are different than the regular CPI or consumer price index. Tell us where you see that going and how you feel about what we can do to help protect Social Security and Medicare.
Well, first of all, we have to make sure that our seniors receive their COLAs.
Yes,
that
exactly.
happened with Medicare
I agree with you.
this year. And we have to, through the legislation we passed here in Congress, extend Medicare so that it's secure into the future, and the same with Social Security. Those are earned benefits that should never be taken away.
Right.
I am concerned, because of the drought and rising food prices, that those prices will go higher. We know, I want to take a guess at a number, maybe only a third of seniors actually apply for SNAP benefits so they can get assistance at the store or the farmer's market to buy food. But when these food prices go up because of the drought, honestly, many seniors who are eligible should apply. They have earned the right not to prowl down the aisles of the store or the farmer's market and feel like, I can't afford that. They qualify for many of these food benefits, and they should apply for them.
Well, we want to fight for our senior citizens, and I know many people know that I have a pair of boxing gloves in my office that were given to me by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare to show our fight for senior citizens, and we know they've made our country what it is today, and I'm glad you and I share that strong commitment to our senior citizens. One final area I wanted to talk to you about that you and I have shared a proactive stance on, and that's in the area particularly dealing with some of the women's health issues like breast cancer. I know every year that I've been in office, we've had a breast cancer awareness program where we have promoted National Mammography Day. We've wanted to make sure that women get the screenings that they need, and I know in October that's always a big emphasis back home. And we have respected the fact that you too have had a great concern with regard to breast cancer awareness. We've also had initiatives in the area of cervical and ovarian cancer. And in our situation, we've also been very much at the forefront with prostate cancer. Cancer is that word that we all hate to hear, and we know how it strikes people's lives in unexpected ways, no matter what their race or background or age or geographic location. Tell us a little bit about your passion and your work in that area.
Well, I think importantly in the area of breast cancer, we have changed the law. You and I have changed the law to allow women who undergo that procedure to remain in the hospital for 2 days, 48 hours, not just an outpatient. Oh my goodness, no. And then through our work on defense, we have been able actually to provide tens of millions of dollars for our breast cancer research with new breakthrough technologies for diagnosis, for treatment. So much is changing. Every 6 months something wonderful happens that is able to save more lives. So even through defense and through the research dollars that we have available to us, we are trying to unlock the mysteries of these very complicated cancers. That is also true, as you mentioned, with prostate cancer. And in the health bills that have passed here for seniors, we now will provide, and for others who have preventive health care plans, annual mammographies and prostate screenings. This is an enormous change for the country. I had a dear friend who died of ovarian cancer, and I could not believe that she had never gone in for a checkup. She was a working woman. She was intelligent. She was the leader in her church. And I never thought to ask her. And one bit of advice I give to your listeners, whoever your best friend is or best friends are, members of your family, you're sitting around and talking, make sure they go for an annual screening. For a mammogram or for a prostate screening.
Colon cancer. That's another
colon
area
cancer. We have a dear friend here in Congress who is struck with colon cancer, and I just had a cousin die of colon cancer. His family had never taken him for the screening, and so don't think people are doing it. Be a good family member, be a good community member. If you're a member of a card club or a bingo club or tennis club, whatever the club is, golf club, don't think that your best friend is going in and doing what you think they're doing, getting a checkup. Many of them are not.
Well, that's great advice. And because you do love those friends, reach out in love and say, hey, I care about you enough to ask you this question. I'm not prying. I'm actually showing that I care about you and your well-being and your family's well-being. Marcy, I want to thank you for being with us today. Our time has gone by fast. I know our listeners have seen that this woman is a great leader in Congress. You can see why the people of Ohio love her and respect her. And she has stood up, even when it's not popular, on these trade agreements, for instance. I've seen her stand up in leadership meetings to say, we must do the right thing. And this is not about political gamesmanship or partisanship. It's about doing the right thing. And Marcy's that kind of leader, because we know jobs are important to all Americans. Cancer strikes all Americans. All Americans want to be safe. All Americans want to be able to eat. And one great thing I've told people about the Agriculture and Armed Services Committees, which we mentioned, if you were with us earlier in the program, we mentioned that I serve on those committees and you serve on the Appropriations Committee that oversees those appropriations for those committees, that that's not really a Democrat or Republican issue. Most people I know want to be able to eat, and they want to be safe. And that's what Armed Services and our Agriculture Committees do. And that's something that applies to every American. So thank you, Marcy, for showing that kind of leadership, whether it's in senior citizens work or the women's health issues we've talked about in dealing with these terrible issues of cancer, or in all the great work you do for agriculture and for armed services. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Thank you again, Marcy, for being with us.
I reciprocate the compliments and thank the people of North Carolina for sending you here to Congress and gaining the experience and seniority to make a difference for them.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. This has been another edition of Capitol Conversations. I hope you'll contact our congressional office if I can assist you in any way. We have 4 offices in southeastern North Carolina, which you can readily visit, or we'll come to you. We have folks out in the field that come to our smaller communities and that come out to the byways and the highways to meet folks in the rural areas as well. You also can follow us on Twitter or Facebook, so look us up. We're on the web, and we'll be glad to email you and keep you informed about what's going on in Washington. Thank you for tuning in to Capitol Conversations. May God bless you and your family, and thanks so much for watching.